Welcome to another episode of Full Build Friday, where I try to build a character from a comic, game, or similar source using the baseline rules of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. These characters are built on Path Builder 2e. We're back to the lovely lands of League of Legends for this week as I try to build a ninja that's about as subtle as Naruto. Shen, the Eye of Twilight.
A demonstration of superior judgment.
As always, we have to lay a foundation of build goals before we can really get started. Within League, Shen is a melee tank champion, classified as a Warden, which is a subclass that focuses on disrupting enemies and taking damage for their allies rather than being beefy brawlers. He is aided in this effort by his Key Barrier passive, which grants him a shield whenever he uses an ability. The first of these activated abilities is Twilight Assault, which calls his ever-present Spirit Blade to his location and empowers his next 3 attacks. If the blade passes through an enemy in this journey, that enemy is briefly slowed. Shen makes further use of his ethereal blade with Spirit's Refuge, which causes an area to radiate around the blade in which the basic attacks of enemies are completely blocked. Naturally, as a ninja, Shen has a Shadow Dash, which causes him to charge forward a short distance and taunt any enemies that he passes through. His final ability is Stand United, which sees him channel and shield an ally before he and his Spirit Blade teleport to them. On the lore side of things, Shen is the leader of the Kinkow Order, a secret organization within Ionia dedicated to preserving the balance between the physical world and the spirit realm. As their leader, he is known as the Eye of Twilight and must remain impartial, suppressing his emotions to serve in this role. Due to his strong connection to the spirit realm, he is able to see into it, detecting spiritual connections and pass between both realms. Now let's make like Misery and build some character. To start with, we'll take a look at the ABCs, ancestry, background, and class, for this nigh invulnerable ninja. We'll stick with the human ancestry for Shen, but make use of the Aphorite versatile heritage. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've at least heard of Aasimars and Tieflings, but this is a heritage along those lines except it is associated with Axiomites and the lawful neutral plane of Axis. While one of Shen's flavor stories may be named True Neutral, his refusal to bend in his duties and his mission is more akin to lawful, and as somebody born and raised among the Kinkow Order, this felt like a fun fit, and a chance to make use of a heritage that I might otherwise not get a chance to use. Unfortunately, he doesn't get much out of it at first level, instead settling on natural ambition because this particular build needs quite a few first level feats from his class. For his background, I considered Acolyte, but the religion focus of it didn't quite feel right for Shen. Instead, I tapped into a regional background and gave him the Perfection Seeker background, which makes him trained in acrobatics, and somewhat ironically, considering his stance in the war against Noxus, warfare lore. Its Catfall skill feat isn't something that really gets represented in League, but it feels appropriate for Ninja at the very least. Given Shen's classification as a Warden and his many defensive abilities, my first concept for him was as a champion, but it ended up missing out on a few key elements of the character. Instead, I made use of the Monk class, which fits a bit more easily with his image as a ninja. Thanks to his natural ambition, he gets an extra class feat, so he will have monastic weaponry and Key Rush. The former allows him to wield a temple sword, as his main weapon in the game is a blade, whereas Key Rush at least helps simulate the dash part of Shadow Dash. The Conceal it grants is also the closest way that Shen can gain Spirit's Refuge for himself, though it's still only a chance they miss. As a monk, he will become trained in athletics, nature, occultism, and religion. A rather limited list. He'll prioritize his strength out of his ability scores and does also need some charisma for a future aspect of this build. But otherwise, he will want to pump up his dexterity and constitution for defensive reasons. Proving my point about this class being a first level feat hungry, at second level, Shen will actually take Key Strike, gaining another key spell and a way to enhance his strikes. The fact that this works with Flurry of Blows is a nice way to represent the empowered attacks of his Twilight Assault. Will take up Root Magic for his skill feat, meshing nicely with his protective nature and connection to the spiritual realm. Surprising absolutely no one, at third level Shen grabs Toughness to bolster his hit points and better serve as a tank. I decided to initially focus on the more spiritual side of Shen, and applied his first skill increase to Occultism, making him an expert in it. At 4th level, Shen's charisma is still a little too low to take a feat I've got my eyes on, so instead, he'll pick up Stand Still. Taunts as a concept don't really exist in Pathfinder, as they do in games such as League, but this gives him a reaction to potentially stop an enemy from moving past him, forcing them to focus on him rather than his allies. As shown in the lesson animation, Shen's role as the Eye of Twilight affords him a different view of reality, and I'll be taking a couple of different sight-based feats to help represent that, starting with Aura Sight, which I think might be one of the best representations of what he demonstrated within the short. 5th level brings some much needed ability boost, as well as the Know Oneself Ancestry feat, representing his dedication to remaining impartial and free of emotion in his role as the Eye of Twilight. He'll also increase athletics to expert because I've seen others talk about how grapple in Pathfinder can kind of represent a taunt. Enemies need to burn an action with the attack trait to get out of the grapple and get to his allies. I'm not going to dive super deep into this, but it is a side of it that I hadn't considered before and thought it was worth mentioning. So, with those ability boosts, Shen qualifies for a champion dedication at 6th level. While I think Shen is lawful neutral at heart, and we don't know how the champion is going to look following the remaster, the Redeemer cause best fits Shen for mechanical reasons, and I will be going with that option. This mainly allows him to become trained in diplomacy and society, and that unfortunately is kind of the biggest benefit to this feat, for now though. We'll get into more later. As a skill feat though, Shen can grab Read Psychometric Resonance for similar reasons as Aura Sight. I feel like this fits in with his ability to see into the spirit realm and notice the connections between objects. Shen is going to use his general feats to help better fulfill his role as a tank, and he therefore grabs Die Hard at level 7. He also gets his first Path to Perfection, and despite being a pretty brawny dude, I went with increasing his will to master first to make him more resistant to mental and emotional effects. For his skill crease, he becomes a master in occultism as well. The next 2 class feats can really be taken in whichever order you prefer, but I ended up starting with Abundant Step, a 3rd key spell and one that grants him the ability to teleport, serving and partially representing his Stand United ultimate. Naturally, he'll also take up Consult the Spirits with his occultism skill, since that is part of his role as the Eye of Twilight. Lemma of Vision at 9th level is another vision-based ability that grants him Dark Vision. Interestingly, this is an ancestry feat that grants Dark Vision, and yet doesn't have to be taken at 1st level, like so many of them do. This time around for his skills, he'll increase his athletics to master. Finally, at 10th level, Shen takes his champion's reaction, which means, as a Redeemer, he gains the Glimpse of Redemption reaction. This can either lower the damage dealt to an ally, or prevent it entirely, befitting both the shield granted by his ultimate and the attack blocking area of Spirit's Refuge, or the barriers granted by his card in Legends of Runeterra. Then, mostly because he's a ninja, and I do say ninja even looser than I did for Konkoro, he will take Quick Jump, which could also maybe be used to represent the dash of his Shadow Dash. His 11th level general feat will be Fast Recovery, just to help him be a little bit hardier. Speaking of which, his 2nd Path to Perfection makes him a master in Fortitude, whereas his skill increase boosts his nature skill to Expert, which might seem a little bit strange, but is something that I definitely have a purpose behind taking, I promise you. Diving deeper into his champion archetype, Shen grabs Divine Ally at 12th level to gain a Blade Ally, mainly so that he can grant his Temple Sword the Ghost Touch property, at least slightly mimicking his Spirit Blade. From his skill feats, he'll take Wall Jump for reasons that I don't feel need to be stated, but will be anyway. He's a ninja, and what ninja worth their salt can't do at least one jump off of a wall? I feel like I haven't really been showcasing some of the neat Aetheryte ancestry feats, but at 13th level he can pick up Impose Order. This is again based on the impartiality that he must maintain in his role. When something tries to unbalance the scales with misfortune, he must use fortune to restore the balance. He'll also increase his acrobatics to Expert so that he can get a little more out of his catfall, since he already has it anyway. 14th level lets Shen grab Aligned Key. While limited to an hourly use, this matches fantastically with his Key Barrier passive, which I was worried about being able to mimic at all within this build. It is also heal rather than temporary HP, which might better match a shield, but this is already closer than my original idea. Water Sprint will be a skill feat because, again, ninja. At least he's supposed to be. Not that he's lacking in movement speed at this point as a monk, but at 15th level he'll take Fleet just to eke out a little bit more. And this does also have the benefit of increasing the range of his Abundant Step. A 3rd Path to Perfection sees him increase his will to Legendary, and from his skills, Occultism follows suit. There are a couple of solid monk feats you could grab at 16th level, especially if you want to do more with maneuvers to simulate his taunts. But with this build's focus on key spells, I thought it might be fun to take up Desperate Prayer through the use of the basic devotion feat. having Shen dip into the spiritual realm to channel its power and give him more magic. I remember reading somewhere that the Kinkow Order is supposed to be a fairly secretive organization, and given its antagonism with the Brotherhood of Shadows, Schooled in Secrets felt like an appropriate feat, while also playing into his focus on occultism. I mentioned earlier that I was trying to take a few feats here and there for Shen's spirit vision. At 17th level, he can avoid heroic presence and fulfill that goal by instead grabbing Channel the God Mind. Aside from having an absolutely awesome name, this gives Shen true seeing, and the ability to see invisible creatures and objects for a full minute. It's just a lot of fun. Will also become legendary in athletics. Enlightened Presence at 18th level is a solid fit given Shen's unwavering nature and his role as a leader of the Kinkow. The aura grants a bonus specifically against mental effects, but most emotion effects will also be mental in nature. As for his skill feat, Cloud Jump is a fun one, allowing Shen to leap impossible distances. At 19th level, Shen takes Feather Step to further help his mobility as a ninja. This level skill increase makes him a master in nature. For his capstone at 20th level, I think it's honestly hard to choose something other than Golden Body. I do personally think it is, hands down, the best monk feat at 20th level. However, it is uncommon, so if it is disallowed, Enduring Quickness isn't a bad option to become permanently quickened, allowing Shen to get into the thick of it faster. And having these quickened feats, it's always nice, it's always useful. With his recent mastery of the nature skill, Shen can also take Morphic Manipulation to hasten the growth of trees and other foliage, just as we saw him do in the lesson. And with that, we have come to the end of this build, which means that it's time to give it a quick review. Shen is an Aphorite human monk of the Perfection Seeker background, representing his rigorous training and rearing as a member of the Kinkow Order. A melee champion in League of Legends, he stays true to that by wielding a temple sword through monastic weaponry, and can tank with his investment in Constitution, Toughness, Die Hard, and similar feats. Align Key heals Shen rather than providing a shield, but is otherwise a fantastic fit for his Key barrier. He can represent his Twilight Assault with Key Strike, which can be used to make a flurry of blows with, befitting the multitude of empowered attacks that he gets to make. The full negation of damage by Glimpse of Redemption from his champion's reaction is probably the best way to represent Spirit's Refuge, with his ability to block attacks, though he can also personally generate it for himself with Key Rush, which will make him concealed. This key spell also helps with his Shadow Dash, allowing him to stride or step twice for a single action. As mentioned, there isn't really a taunting mechanic in Pathfinder, but getting up in the faces of enemies and using feats like Stand Still can help force them to focus on him. Stand United is a two-parter to achieve. First off, he can teleport to his allies, or anywhere really, with Abundant Step, and can then protect them with his champion's reaction, which also fits in well with his Legends of Runeterra card. As the impartial Eye of Twilight for the Kinkow Order, Shen can stifle his emotions with Know Oneself, while his spiritual sight and connections can be found in feats such as Aura Sight, Read Psychometric Resonance, and Enlightened Presence. In particular, we can see his ability to encourage the growth of trees as shown in the lesson through his Morphic Manipulation. Shen is a solemn and stoic shinobi, set on serving scales of spirit and substance while saving squadmates from scoundrels, slicing at sinister shadows with swords of steel and soul. Feel free to let me know what you think of this build, and what other characters you might like to see by leaving a comment. You can check out the blog for a breakdown on the build that also includes items and suggestions for a free archetype game. That, along with the Monster Monday Twitter and Discord, are linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic Friday.